welcome to the stage, Ginger Shimp from SAP America.
Thanks.
Congratulations, Ginger won the MarketingSherpa Reader's Choice Award winner, chosen by the readers of MarketingSherpa. So your peers selected you. Congratulations.
Wow, so awesome.
All right, let's tell your story. Okay, clicker here. Okay, so we're going to talk about buyer journeys and content and not a whole lot of resources, despite you thinking SAP must have a ton of them.
Right.
So let's just get some context here. So if you've been in an airport in the last couple of years, you know these big campaigns. So the best run businesses run SAP, and then you had your Run Simple.
That's right.
And then this is Live Business. And you were in charge of a campaign to support the industry portion of this campaign.
That's right.
Why don't you tell us about that?
Oh, absolutely. So as Jessica just told you, that we started with Run Simple, then we went to Live Business, and the idea with Live Business is to take the real time to the next level. So it's being able to look at analytics and data points and to get statuses right now, right here, wherever you are, and be able to connect those dots and make the decisions that people need to run their businesses. And so my boss came to me, my VP, and asked me if I would lead an effort to take this theme into each of the verticals that we support.
And not just a couple verticals, and not simple verticals, but...
No. It was a lot. We activated 19 of the vertical industries within North America, and as you can see, they're disparate. We have manufacturing, and we have healthcare, and we have education and utilities, and it ran the gamut, and they had some things in common, and then, as you can well imagine, they had some things that were 180 degrees from the next.
And so the main theme around this was digital transformation, which is not unique these days. That obviously the trend here, it's been increasing. A lot of people are shouting this.
Absolutely. And in fact, if you were to Google digital transformation right now, don't do that, you'll probably break the internet. It's something everybody's talking about. And SAP does not make software SAP for digital transformation. So this was very much a thought leadership campaign that we needed to launch to provide the air cover to generate demand.
Got it. Now let's talk about your customers a little bit. You mentioned about the industry, so these are CFOs, CIOs, CEOs, marketing people too, in very complicated industries. What are you solving for them?
That's right. A lot of these companies are large, say 100 million and above. So some are super large. They're a billion and above. And we needed to be able to talk up and down the revenue spectrum, and we needed to be able to talk to the different lines of business. We're very comfortable talking to IT. We are also very comfortable talking to some of the other lines of business, whether it is marketing or the finance line of business, or maybe it's operations. And in particular, we were looking at not just the executive level, who are your traditional what do you want to call them, the decision makers. But we also needed to hit the key influencers as well. And we also needed to hit the folks who work more in an advisory capacity. And man, our customers are smart. We were not going to be able to fake this one.
Right. And the challenge you're solving for them when it comes down to it is?
Taking their business into very much the digital world. It's probably exactly what all of you are struggling with. So it's always on, and it's hyperlinked, and people are hopping in and out of the buyer's journey at almost unpredictable points, and you don't know what role they're playing. Are they the advisor, or are they just the decision maker? And we had to sort of come up with the strategy, not sort of, we absolutely had to come up with a strategy that would enable us to have conversations at the level we needed to, but at the same time not disenfranchise the folks whom we weren't necessarily targeting. Because it was digital, they're going to be encountering our content.
Got it. Now let's talk about you just quickly. You have been at SAP for some time, and you know the industries pretty well.
Yes, so I started with SAP about 13 years ago. Prior to that, like many people probably, I probably lasted 2 years at a particular role. SAP is huge, so you can move around a lot. And I have encountered not all 19 industries, but many of them, and I'm in no way the expert. And we have an interesting setup in that some of our roles are for subject matter experts. We call them value engineering because their job is not to sell, but to talk to our prospects and our customers and understand what it is they're trying to achieve and help them get there. And not unlike, you know, I love my company. So when I say this, I'm not trying to say it's not something that you all do. So I'm hoping that I get this head nod going with all of you. But when we are talking with our customers and when they have actually purchased SAP, they not only have the right, I would opine that they have an obligation to come to us to say, this thing right here in my company is broken, help. And then we figure that out with them.
Awesome. Okay, let's get back to the campaign. So this is live business. Your VPs come in, charge you with this task. You have no resources. It's on top of what you're already doing.
Right.
Let's talk about your approach.
Absolutely. So when my VP, Michelle, asked me to lead it, it was not, I'm creating a new team, you're going to be full-time dedicated to it. We had people who had their day jobs and were asked to form a tiger team. So there are some people who had too much on their plates. No worries, they did not have to say yes. So this was volunteer, and we all understood that this was in addition to what we normally do. And what we tried to do was streamline, and I think we're going to get to that a little bit later on, but it was primarily run by the Tiger team, and the first thing that we started to do is break down the individual piece parts of what the campaign would entail.
And this central digital hub for each industry was really the focus.
That was where we landed, is we said we needed an online library of sorts, and that's where the hubs came up. And we also needed to be able to talk to each of our prospects and customers in ways that they understood. Very easy example. You might have a professional services firm, but you have a banking institution, or you have an enterprise, or you have a company, but they don't all use the same language to identify their organization.
And you need to be able to scale, of course, too.
Yeah,
okay.
Big time.
Let's get right to the look at these digital hubs. Here's sort of the anatomy. We're just going to break it down before we get into the how you pulled it off. So here's 3 industries: banking, healthcare, and retail. And let's just step through, because this is how you're able to scale, is through this
Yes.
template. Okay.
Yes, so our team developed a template for us, and what we asked them to do was make a few modifications. And the reason we wanted a template was to enable us to have a unified look up and down the value chain. So if we are talking to a retailer, it's quite probable that a consumer products manufacturer or a wholesale distributor would also see what we did for retail. So we needed a unifying theme. And so how we started was with the imagery across the top so that they knew they were home. It was something that would resonate with them visually. Then we worked on the scripting, and we tried to write in such a way that each of the industries could make minor tweaks if they needed to. For example, nobody calls a bank a company, right? So they could make that tweak, but it would actually play for at least some of the industries with no tweaks. The next thing that we did was we put in, if you want to go down to we put in our gated asset right up front. So usually by the time someone hit our hub, they were looking for the gated piece of content, but we wanted them to see that there was other content available as well. However, we didn't want to bury the lead, so we kept our gated piece right up at the top. One of the changes to the template that we did ask, going down to the next piece, was that we be able to stream a video live and not have them click away. And beneath that, we did 3 columns. We ensured that this would look appropriate on mobile devices as well as online. And we asked for scrolling so that if you were in a section that had a certain type of content, you didn't scroll forever. You could actually pop into that window. Then some of the industries had third-party pieces or something really different that was happening, and we needed to be able to accommodate that. And this section was where we could accommodate that. So let me land on retail for a moment. NRF was going on, which is a Mongo show, and it sort of takes over the industry. And this was where we were able to house a lot of content around that particular event so that people could find it all in a certain place and not have to scroll throughout the site for it. And then below that, we added additional reasons to believe. This could be a number of different types of content. Some of it might have been additional white papers. Some of it could have been additional videos, or maybe it was a research report. But it was all around the central theme of digital transformation within that particular industry. And we also at SAP are very, very fortunate because we have two things that we were able to leverage. One was a radio show. So we went to the producers of the radio show and we asked that we be able to produce podcasts for each of the industries. And they actually jumped at the chance, and we were able to brand that particular series for ourselves. So links to the podcasts were included in the site. And the other thing that is just amazing is we have MOOCs, massive open online courses. No charge to take the classes, but it's sort of buried. There's a ton of information that you could find there. So in working with the Open SAP team who do our online learning, we asked them to gather all of the classes around digital transformation for us, and this is what we were able to link to there. And the next thing we did, remember I talked to you about the value engineers? We asked them to help us with a survey. I love surveys. Do you guys like to take surveys? They're very interactive. It's kind of like a micro survey right here, and nobody's raising your hand. Thank you. I mean, we do them even on Facebook, right? Like, what song personifies your life? You know, we can't help it. We just do them. The neat thing about surveys is once we hit critical mass for any given industry, we were able to take that information back and generate even more content, whether it was a research report or another infographic, or I think at one point we actually spawned a brand new white paper. And then we wrapped up with the voice of the customer. So these were the testimonials, and they took any kind of format. They could be video or written or something else.
Got it. And you supported that, of course, with campaigns that drove there.
We did. So everything that we did, because it was digital transformation, was digital, not surprisingly. So we sort of owned all of the channels that we could find. There are some channels that we don't do well in just because our customers aren't there. Snapchat. There was absolutely no reason for us to do that. But all of the other channels, we absolutely jumped on.
Awesome. Great. That's really helpful just to kind of get that bird's eye view. You guys can download these slides and dig in a little deeper into the actual content in there, see some of that language and see how it's structured. So this is what you actually built. Here's 3 of 19 that you did in North America.
That's right.
Globally, you did how many?
25.
Got it. Okay. So pretty complex content strategy. How did you actually produce this? So let's start with sort of the step 1, which is focusing on that individual person at that company.
That's right. Scroll on to the next. Okay. So when we were doing our research looking at our topic, we found that there were 3 distinct areas within the business that were germane for us, and that was operations, finance, and IT. But we also got to play with some of the newer titles, such as the Chief Digital Officer, the Chief Innovation Officer, the Chief Transformation Officers. And we had to look at the, recall also I was talking about how they're the decision makers, the key influencers, and the advisors. The other thing we had to look at is how they choose to consume information. So in our research, and I do have the sources that I could cite for this, one of the things as an example that came up is at the executive level, 59% of executives would rather watch a video than read.
Right.
54% of senior executives will share business-related video content at least once a week. So not surprisingly, we decided video was a thing, and so we made sure that we had video in there, but then we tailored the content to be higher level and with enough hooks in it that the goal being the chief executives would take the video, consume it, and forward it to someone else to do the deeper dive. We also knew that some people are inveterate readers. So how do you people learn? So I thought I was a reader. My VP told me, no, I'm conversational, and video stands in as the proxy for conversation. So how many learn by conversation? Yeah? How many think you're audio learners? Yep. And then how many of you want something a little bit more, I don't want to say pretty pictures, it sounds so derogatory, but you're visual learners, right? See, and this is typically the response that I get, and typically a lot of people will raise their hand more than once. I'm an audio learner, but I also like conversation type of things. Hence, we had the podcasts, and we had the infographics, and we had everything that you could read. We had all kinds of videos. But the next thing that we had to make sure that we were checking off is, did we have each of those for the different levels of buying? And did we have it in the language for each of our vertical industries? So the campaign started with one white paper. Our Chief Transformation Officer wrote it. Our CEO wrote the intro. We next versioned it for each of the 25 vertical industries. Then we started to run, am I getting ahead of myself?
Yep.
I'm going to stop there. She's
good.
looking at me like, stop.
No, never. So you did some studies around
Yes.
different learning types and adult
Yes, I did.
learning. Yeah. So those are, this particular section, I think we pulled it out of that retail to focus in on, you had
Yes.
slides and presentations and infographics.
Right. This is a great piece of takeaway for us. Our sales force was an absolute machine, and they were creating content for us. They helped us with creating slide decks, and I'm talking, 6 to 9 slides. We went to them and we said, imagine that you're meeting an executive who has no relationship with us whatsoever, and you have like a minute to get our value proposition around this topic over to them. Build me that deck. And they did. And so we put that up on SlideShare, and we took some of that imagery and we used it for other pieces of our campaign. We also were, I'm trying to read from the side, so I apologize if I'm leaning out towards you guys. We also tried to make sure that when we had any big piece, we chopped it down. So we might take a sound clip or an image or a video clip and drop it into some other piece that would lead back to the full piece, to make sure we were playing in all of the channels to funnel them back to the whole piece that we needed to give away.
And you have a term for that, which is?
I run a digital chop shop at SAP. So here's an example of where you can see we started with the white paper, and we wrote blogs, and we did a video white paper. Remember I told you that some of these, 54% of senior executives will share a video at least once a week. We wrote a script from our white paper, and we hired a team to film the script. We threw in some of the imagery from our briefing decks that the sales force did for us, and we created 3.5 to 4 minute videos aimed at the senior executive and funneling people over to the full white paper. Obviously, we did blogs and we did tweets and status reports on LinkedIn. We had our podcasts. You can see the whole thing. The interesting thing is we researched the rules for TED Talks, and we went back to our sales teams and asked them to videotape our TED Talk videos for us.
And you mentioned 4 minutes, so just 2 fun kind of tips of things you use.
Yes. So these are free of charge, but the Hemingway app. I love this app. When you write, you drop it, whatever you've written, into this app, and you just download it. It sits on your desktop. And it will tell you what the grade level is, and it will help you stay in active voice if you want. It will help you eliminate, say, too many adverbs or something along those lines. So as an example, I would write the script, run it by my subject matter experts who would do the editing, and I would drop it in here, and it would come back. You need a grade 17 to be able to understand what you just wrote. And so then back to my SMEs to say, could you please help me take this down? We were targeting about a grade 10 or 11 because it just was going so fast. Even though the people who would be consuming it might actually have that level of education, it was going so fast that we really had to pull it down. The other tool that I use is called ReadTime, and that's actually a site. So I think it's readtime.com. And you can find any app that you like, but the neat thing is you put it in and you say how fast the speaker will typically be going, and it will tell you how long your script is. in terms of a finished read time. And that helped us to go into the studio, record once, and be done.
Because you started with about 10 minutes and then wanted to trim it down, but not so short. You don't want an ad. It's more robust than that. Exactly. Great. Okay, so the knowledge from inside your organization. You mentioned that the very bright people you work with who are not writers. This is a common thread in our content track as well, is how do you harness that? Let's talk about your approach to that.
Yeah, so I'm sure that many marketers in this room are familiar with the problem of getting your subject matter expert to just stay still long enough to communicate that information over to you. They're really smart, but they're in demand a lot. And one of the ways that we found of doing that is we would put them on a phone call, and it was a conference call. We hired writers to first of all, we like to play to the strengths, and many of our subject matter experts are not writers, and that's fine because that's not what they're meant to do. So we would have the conference call, and sometimes it was more than a single subject matter expert. Sometimes we would have maybe 2 or 3, but we tried to keep it no more than 3 because we were putting a writer into the mix as well. And we recorded that call. And then we would get that transcribed, and our subject matter expert was done. He had already given us the download. And now we had this great content. It was gold for the writer. He could draft the white paper, the blogs, the social media copy, and beyond that, because we had those same words, when we were writing, say, the brief underneath a video to post onto YouTube, we could use those same words. So our search engine optimization started to rise because of our repetition.
Got it. You had a few other tips as well for harnessing that kind of knowledge. Why don't you step through a few of those?
Oh, absolutely. So I mentioned the ghostwriting, which is fair. I also mentioned at the top that we started with a single piece of content. So that was something that it's almost a best practice for us internally. That single piece is the piece that is absolutely jam-packed with information. So for us, it was the white paper, and that always stayed behind a gate. But our CEO has this philosophy that leaders have to lead, and you cannot hold information hostage that can help people. So his thing is shout it from the rooftops, give it away. And on the other hand, I have stockholders who want us to sell things. So the way that we sort of split that little Gordian knot was we kept our white papers behind the gate, but we ran our digital chop shop pulling pieces out. The ghostwriter could help you with that. And your seminal piece then is always protected. But here's the cool thing. Everything we did had at least 2 calls to action. One was for a free piece of content, and one was for the gated piece. So if you read the blog, it might say, go look at the infographic, or download our white paper. If you were at SlideShare and you looked at all the slides, it might say, hey, go read the blog, or go watch a video, or something else that was ungated, and then we always gave you a link to the gate. Consequently, when we got to people actually getting over the gate, they were pretty committed. They wanted that piece of content. And the other thing that using a ghostwriter helps with is a lot of times, especially in sales, we call it the imposter syndrome.
Right.
I mean, I know that it's used externally, but internally, I don't think that they realize how much information they actually have because of their ongoing conversations with all of our customers. So that really helped us to get them over the hump of being able to contribute content for our campaign.
Great, and I know choosing your subject matter, you went through your customers, and you also obviously did your research too.
The whole campaign started because we did go out to the internet to do some benchmarking. So you can see some of the things that were coming up with big data, the Internet of Things. Obviously, digital business was everywhere. Omnichannel was there. And we focused on digital transformation just because of what our software does and how it was the fit for us.
Got it, okay. Now you mentioned the survey as well, which produced its own content once you had enough of it.
It did. So each of these surveys were created uniquely for the industries. There were not the same questions over and over with just a what industry are you in kind of question. These were questions that were spot on for the troubles that our sales team was able to tell us about in terms of what they were hearing out in the real world.
Great. Okay, so you've got this together, you've chopped up your content, you've developed it, and now the leads just pour in, right? Quite.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. So I'm sure you all know, when you have a long sales cycle, it means you also have a long marketing cycle. And so what we did was we looked at what are some of the early indicators that we were getting traction in the market. We looked at conversations that were starting. How many people were listening to those podcasts? How many people were clicking through? Okay, you weren't downloading, but you were clicking through, you were sharing. How long were you staying on the sites? How many pages did you look at? So we were able to sort of keep the internal temperature from ratcheting up by sharing the early indicators while we were waiting for the hard metrics to come through.
Which we'll talk about in just a little bit. You mentioned also about balancing your objectives, your shareholders versus your objectives, and it can be tough when those leads aren't coming in, that somebody says, put it behind the gate, put it behind the gate. How did you balance that?
So going back again, leaders have to lead, so you have to share information that could be helpful to the marketplace in general. You have to look like a thought leader. Right? If you're going to act like one and proclaim yourself one, you got to act like it. And so our team got together, and our sort of rule of thumb was for everything that we would gate, because we did gate one video and we gated the white paper, we would share at least 3 pieces that were not gated. We gated, obviously, the MOOCs. You can't sign up for a course without giving us your information. That's
Right.
just sort of a given.
And then you can see the ratio there. The pieces behind the pink are gated. Everything else is just opens directly. Great. So here's another view of that. I think this is the professional services.
Yes.
I just wanted to share one thing. I went through all the pages and learned a whole lot about all of these industries. And one thing I really liked, it's too small to see. You'll have to download the slide. But the language that appears after you fill out that form, often you fill out a form and then the thing automatically downloads. This message has sort of you now have unlimited access to all the content. It's subtle, but it's like, oh, all I can eat, and there's a lot on here. I think it's, I might bookmark that and come back again. So think about that too, your customers' sort of thought process, even after they've clicked through the form. So I liked that.
One quick point about that. Our initial treatments, that thank you was really big, and honestly, it just wasn't aesthetically there for us. Had the subtle one not worked, we would have increased the size of that. But I'm surprised at how many people picked that up. I was really pleased that the subtle worked.
Yeah, for sure.
That was a wow moment for us.
Who knew? Okay, so how'd you pull it all off? You've mentioned it wasn't new hires. You did have a few writers come on board to help you out, to flesh out some things. But you had that Tiger team. Let's go through that.
Absolutely. So I was starting to get into the whole, we asked for volunteers. So what we did once we had the Tiger team in place, we all knew that we were here to get this campaign into market, and then we were going to go back to our real lives. So whatever we were signing up to do, we knew it was not going to be in perpetuity. And so we developed work streams. We needed somebody to lead social. We needed somebody to lead tele, as an example. So once any individual got over the pain of how do I get all of this done efficiently, typically in our day jobs, we would go on to the next pain, right? What we decided to do is each one of our team leads would do it for all 19 industries. So once you figured out how to get things into the paid media stream, do it for all 19 industries, because guess what? Someone else is doing tele for you so that you don't have to go do that. So we shared the work. One of, I keep quoting our CEO. I swear he is a writer. And he's just so charismatic and just a brilliant man. But he says, the goal is to simplify everything so that you can do anything. We would never have been able to pull this off if we hadn't simplified. And so that's what those work streams allowed us to do. Because everyone knew at the end of the day, the end of the week, month, whatever, I was not going to be the paid media person for everybody for the rest of my life. I was going to do it for just now, and then I was going to go away.
And that made it doable.
Everybody signed on, and I think the entire team was very happy about it in the end.
Awesome. Okay, let's look actually at one of your campaigns, your creation timeline.
Okay.
You had a lot of pieces moving. This is one, I guess, template that you applied to all your industries. Why don't you walk us through that?
I think the key takeaway here is that it was not fast. We had to allow time up front to get those first industry-specific white papers done. That was just a big time suck. but we were parallel pathing.
Right.
So while the white papers were being done, we were already thinking about the blogs. So that initial white paper, I told you we then modified it for 25 different industries, 19 of which we activated in North America. We had a minimum of 10 blogs per industry. We had tweets per industry. We had, the podcasts, the videos, and on and on. We wound up with 650 pieces of content, and we could only do that by parallel pathing. So once you were in the middle of understanding a single white paper, get your blogs done. Think about what content you can pull in to make your podcast sing. So it wasn't repetitive, it was additional information. It wasn't repetitive information. What could you put in a video? So if we mentioned a customer success story within the white paper, we needed different customer proof points to put elsewhere, either in our landing pages, or maybe it was a video that we just wanted to have standalone.
Got it. And that catalyst to kick off each industry was the seminal piece.
It was that seminal piece.
Being completed. Great. So let's look at the campaign flow when it comes to that customer journey.
Yep. So we asked ourselves just your basic yes, no. If they said yes, well, we were all doing our happy dances and high-fiving each other. If they said no, we didn't take no as a real no. We took it as a micro no. We took it as a not now. And so we gave them more information. And again, because we kept pushing out free information, we kept getting more and more yeses. And, it all culminates in the sale.
Got it. Okay. So now, the moment we've all been waiting for, ta-da, the results. Let's get into
we need
first,
a drum roll.
Right? First, the engagement metrics. So just people actually hanging onto the content and reading it.
I could read this to you, but I'm just going to give you a minute to absorb. These are huge numbers, guys. I know it was 25 industries. We never saw this coming. And of course, now we've set the bar really high for our next campaign. But when you start thinking about, do I really want to do a podcast? Over the past 10 years, podcasts for business have increased at least 25%. So you have people with long commutes, or you have people, maybe they're, Ironman competitors and they need to train. So podcasts was a big learning piece for us. If you look at people who are watching videos, those TED Talk videos have really taken off. So these are big numbers, and a lot of these are just not that hard and just not that expensive. And I know not everybody has SAP behind you. And I know everybody probably thinks we're SAP, we have a huge marketing budget. We're a sales company. So we like to joke that we were marketing on shoestrings. I mean, they were glittery, sparkly shoestrings, but they were shoestrings. So I am not a proponent of doing corporate videos on your phone at all. But here's the trick. You can write prompts, soft prompts, and then run a competition with your sales team and ask them to take those prompts to their customers. What made you think about considering us? What was your experience working with us like? So not the hard metrics that no lawyer would ever allow you to publicize, the soft things. And your sales teams can do man-on-the-street videos with their iPhones. And you run a little internal competition to get your sales teams behind it. And then you're generating lots and lots of really neat quotes that you can pepper throughout your campaign.
Awesome. So that's engagement, like you say, lots of people
Voice
getting
of the customer.
in there. Let's talk about pipeline.
Yay. So yeah, we wound up with a staggering amount of pipe. And these are split across industries, but it was all from a single campaign. And some of this was in-person events, some of this was unfortunately, we never had the example where somebody called and said, I got to get me some of that. That just doesn't happen. So a lot of this was working with our teleteams to understand the different industries and how our solutions play and what their pain points are so that they could nurture that and help us drag it over the goal line.
Got it. Okay, so just to wrap up of sort of the key points, again, really complex content strategy. Even if you took this and applied it to one industry, I think you'd get some great success.
I think you would.
So you're going to share a few key learnings. If you guys have any questions, I think we have some mic runners here, so please just raise your hands so we can come around to you. Got one right here and a couple over here. Ginger, why don't you give us a sum up of your personal this is what I would do if I had to do it again?
So my background is in writing and marketing. I still would never have dared to be the writer on this campaign. I can't begin to tell you how much I believe you should hire a professional writer. At a roundtable just today, this woman had a brilliant idea, and she said that she will frequently call local papers who have topics that align to her business, and she'll look for those writers there, and she'll engage that way. So I cannot tell you how important getting a writer is. It tells your whole story in a much more elegant way than we ever would be able to do. And I wish there were a way to short circuit this, but you just can't. I'm sorry, not short circuit. I wish there were a shortcut for this, but you just have to allow the time to plan. It's the most painful part, I believe. And then, for my money, the biggest aha we had was really paying attention to how people like to consume information and playing to their learning styles. Those are, you know, the world according to Ginger.
Wonderful. Awesome.
You're so nice.
Okay, we got a question here, Keith.
I can't.
Sorry, I just can't quite hear you. Is the mic on there?
You had a slide up about the live industry's campaign flow, and you had said that you had a long pipeline, but the live industry's campaign flow had 3 emails based on whether or not they said no on the first email, second email, third email. I was wondering where you followed up with from there, because obviously 3 emails is not going to last the entire pipeline.
Right, darn it. So what was on the side were the things that were happening, the physical events as well as the social. And what we tried to do was 3 touches for each created piece of content. So not only for the white paper, but then we would immediately go into an email campaign about a video, or we would go into an email campaign about an event. And so we always tried to do 3 touches, and then we would play with the subject lines to see which was resonating more and see what we could learn and map it to our next goal. So that was a truncated piece, but valid question.
Any other questions? Thinking. One right here. Here comes Ken. Thanks, Ken.
What's your plan for maintaining all this content, and when stats change and things change through all this, and how are you accounting for that?
Thank you. Yes, we actually just went through a very onerous process where we rewrote all of the white papers because we wanted to put in a new section. And so we're relaunching the campaign, and we're keeping the site live. We just did a refresh on the content. It does tend to get a little bit shabby where people are saying, oh, hey, can you add this? Can you add this? And pretty soon it just looked a little bit untidy. So we went through and we tightened it up, and we created a new, at least 3 new pieces of content around the same theme. And so the plan is to continue it throughout 2017. And then the VP, whom I told you I love so much, Michelle, now not so much, because she asked me to, in particular, take a laser focus to the net new audience, people who do not have a reason to love us, and that's forcing us to change our wording. Example, if I were to talk, anyone who knows SAP knows that we have this software called SAP S/4HANA. Only our customers care what we call it. We could call it George, and the prospects would care less, right? So instead of talking about what S/4HANA can do, we're changing it to what you need to do. So think yoga, right? And it's about as far away from software as you could think, but you want to strengthen your digital core. You want to increase your flexibility to make decisions live and in the moment. So we're having to rework our messaging to carry it with a laser focus to a new audience.
Good question.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
It was like a plant.
Right?
Great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Good job.
Congratulations, Ginger.